Okay. All right. So there's a couple of resources and websites that go over 508 compliance and how to do it. There's a couple of brochures that CIO has created, which I don't know that they've been updated for the new versions of Word and PowerPoint, but I feel provide kind of a very quick, easy to follow guide for some things you can do to increase accessibility in Word. They have one for Excel too, but most commonly Word and PowerPoint are things that we're sharing with folks. Um, Really, what you want to think about with 508 compliance and accessibility for documents, it's providing partially for folks that maybe have a visual impairment. So maybe they don't, maybe it's a color blindness, or they can't see very well, or they're completely blind. Um, so the accessibility that you add to the documents for that purpose, they use screen readers. A common one is called JAWS, but there's different standard screen readers. Um, a lot of folks, I think, who have a strong visual impairment don't necessarily use the standard screen reader that kind of comes with Windows that sometimes people use to test accessibility. They tend to use JAWS or some other screen reader that has a lot more options and features for them. And what that does is when they open up a document, it reads the document for them so they can hear it. And so any images or graphs or maps that are in there, when you have what's called alt text, the alternative text for those graphs, maps, photos, images, it'll read that off for them. And so I like to think about it as for documents like PowerPoint, Word. I'd like to think about it like you just have someone on the phone and you're reading off the document for them. Like that's what you don't think about. So when you're adding alt text to images, some people are just like, oh, I'm just going to skip over. I'm not going to add alt text for the photo because it's just a photo. Well, there's a reason you added the photo, right? It's to really enhance the document, to add the essence, the flavor, or some inspiration, or whatever reason you're adding the photo. So so that alternative text is always good to add when you're putting a photo in a PowerPoint or a document. And that's one of the accessibility tips. So that's something you think about a lot for documents: color blindness, visual impairments, and obviously, clear organization, plain language, that sort of thing. It just kind of provides for everybody, not just folks that have some sort of accessibility need. When it comes to virtual events, meetings, webinars, and so training and so forth, you're still thinking about that for 508 compliance and visual impairments. But you're also thinking about mobility impairments, and that's where like maybe somebody, it's difficult for them to use a keyboard, but they have a modified mouse, or they can't use a mouse and they're going to use a keyboard instead of a mouse because their hand can't operate a mouse properly. And so that's where keyboard commands, sometimes called keyboard shortcuts, and are helpful. And so it's good to provide a link to where keyboard commands are available for whatever platform you're using as part of your accessibility kind of one-liner that you might put in events that you're doing, because folks who are either have a strong visual impairment and they're using screen readers, or they have a mobility impairment, so they're using a keyboard instead of a mouse, are going to be able to use those keyboard commands in the meeting to navigate around, like to navigate from the main panel to the chat to other places. So you're thinking about that. And then, of course, you're also thinking about hearing impairments. So that's what you already mentioned with the captions. We do have the ability to reserve Fed relay captions, and it's paid for by USDA. So like you don't see the bill, you just have to be able to log in with your government email address to reserve the captions. And I think that the captions can be integrated into Zoom now. I just haven't had to do it, so I haven't learned how to do that. But I was looking at one of the standard caption, so VTAC. So our captions is reserved through Sprint Fed Relay, and I'll put the link in here for you for where that is done. And you have to reserve it at least 12 hours ahead of time. Of course, in Teams meetings and live events, the captions are done automatically. You don't have to reserve it. They're not done by a person. But for Adobe Connect or Zoom or other uses where you might need captions, you can reserve them at least 12 hours in advance from that form. It's very easy to fill out. You just select for service, you put your name, and then the connection information for the event so the captioner can connect. It's an actual person that connects. They typically do connect by phone if that's an option, but they can use audio through the computer if that's the only option you're providing for them. And then they do typically log into the meeting too. That helps them be more accurate when they do that. So you always want to provide that virtual meeting link for them, because then they can see the captioner can see all the content, and it'll help them be more accurate with their spelling and their words and use of acronyms and things like that. The other thing you can do, and I can share my screen now to pull that up. Welcome to others joining. Oh, hold on, I want to share my other screen. Okay.
So I just wanted to hop in real quick, Sherry. Brad, James, Audrey, the link that she posted in the chat that you'll see is the place that you go to request a USDA funded closed captioning service that you have to book in 12 hours in advance. Did I say that right, Sherry?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So you should see it on the screen now. You guys seeing that? Yeah, okay. So you just put your name in. You have to have your government email address in here. You select the yes, you understand what this is for. I usually just put a phone number in here for alternative contact information. And then you provide them with the teleconference number that they'll dial into for the captioning, and if there's an access code, and then the URL and the title. Then you select for service from this list. And then under event notes, what I typically do is put the main speaker's names, so that way when they caption their names, they can get the spelling correctly. And if there's any like common acronyms or like terms that might be kind of jargon the captioner wouldn't know, I'll pop some of that information in there too, because that helps them be more accurate. You can also, once you do that, you can send them the agenda, which can help them be more accurate with their captioning too. So this captioning service, it's a person. They log into your meeting or join by phone. They speak into their devices that are configured for their voices, and that creates the captions. And there's options for the transcript. So obviously you got to select the date, the time. And then you can decide if you want them to keep a copy of the transcript for the captioning, and if you want to allow participants to view it and or view it and save it. What I normally do with the transcripts is I have it kept on the server so that I can request it if I need to, but I don't allow the participants to save a copy of the transcript, just because captions are never 100% accurate. And if you're dealing with something that's kind of like policy or instructions, and a don't was switched with a do or something like that, you don't want people using the transcript as some sort of official record. So and I usually advise folks, sometimes people that I help with meetings will say, oh, can I have the transcript, so we want to use that as our notes or whatever, or we want to share it with people. I tell them, well, okay, I can get it for you and I can share it with you, but please make sure you look at them before you share it with others, because there could be things that are incorrect that you might want to change before you share with others. So you can always email the captioning service afterwards and ask for the transcript if you want it. You don't have to worry about getting that at the time of the meeting. In Adobe Connect, there used to be a captioning pod that you would configure. When you do this request, pretty much like right after, like a minute later, you receive an email with an event confirmation number. The email also has a link. So the captioning service has, they have an interface where you can click the link and it opens it up, and the captions are right there in a separate window. So you can always offer that to people too. If you're doing an event and you can't get it configured into the interface of the platform, they can click the link themselves and watch the captioning. It's going to be in a separate window. So the reason it kind of led me down that train is right now we just, for the Forest Service, I don't know what version of Adobe Connect you guys are running, but we just got 11.2 a week ago. And in the new 11.2, I have found, you guys can let me know if you have found something different, that if we want people to be able to access Adobe Connect with just a regular browser, we need to use the new standard view, not the classic view, the old interface. And with the new standard view, you can't configure the captions pod like you used to be able to. So you have to use the new way to configure the captions. I was trying to figure out how to do that last week, and the instructions weren't detailed enough for me to successfully figure it out. So I have a ticket both into Adobe Connect and to our captioning service to help with that. But so that's why I was kind of like, well, in the interim, I can always reserve the captions, put the link in the chat for people that need it. They can click on it. What I do as far as reserving captions is if it's kind of a known group. So I work with state and private in the Eastern region. I'm the lead for state forest action plans. I work a lot with state planners. I know them. I know who they all are. I've met them. Hopefully, they've let me know if they have some accessibility needs. And I kind of know that none of them need the captions, at least now. So the way I operate for a group like that is when I schedule a meeting, I always put a line in my meeting invite that says accessibility. Here's a link for keyboard commands for Adobe Connect. For example, if I'm using Adobe Connect, that provides accessibility. If you would like live captions or have other accessibility questions or needs, let me know. And I give them a deadline 2 days before the event or whatever, because you never know when someone's needs might change, or maybe they invited someone to sit in for them and they have accessibility needs. So that way they can let me know if they need captions. And so for this known group that I am pretty confident they don't need the captions, then I'm not going to reserve the live captioning for Adobe Connect, and I wouldn't do it for Zoom because they don't need it. And it's not something I'm going to record and then post it that others then might have that need for the captions. For me, for a broader webinar where maybe it's like, so I do competitive grant webinars sometimes, maybe that invite's going to be forwarded out to folks I don't know. And I know also that I want to post that recording where it's going to be more available beyond the known set of group, whether it's internal or external. It's kind of beyond people that I know, so I don't know their accessibility needs. Then in that case, I always try to make sure I'm providing captions. And I do still also put the accessibility note. And in that case, I'll say something like live captions will be provided. Here's a link for keyboard commands for use with Adobe Connect or whatever the platform is. And then I also say, contact me if you have any other access questions or needs. It could be that they really want to have an interpreter, sign language interpreter. And so then I need to figure out how to do that. I've never had to do that before, but I'd figure it out and I would get it. And I would have them for that meeting. Or they may have some other access questions, like how to use keyboard commands or something like that. So that's kind of how I think about with captions and then providing for virtual events. So I'm gonna just pause and see if you guys have questions. Then I'm gonna shift and pull up just a couple of resources for doing accessibility, 508 compliance in as soon as I find the document. So do you guys have any questions about what I covered so far?
That's a negative for me. I'm excited to see what this other thing is. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So this CIO page has some information for 508 compliance. Like I started off and kind of repeat it for those that joined a little bit after I started. There's a lot of different resources on 508 compliance and videos and trainings and guides and stuff like that you can use. But I find these at this site. I just popped the link into the chat. They do have some videos, but I find these brochures pretty easy to follow, and they kind of give you like the basics. If you do the things that are in these little easy to follow brochures, you're going to improve the 508 compliance of your documents like in the 95% without having to have a bunch of accessibility training. So I'm just going to pull up the PowerPoint one and I'll step you through some examples. And there's a lot of similarities between the document, that brochure for Word, and the one for PowerPoint. So a couple of important things is that, and you'll just see here, it's how many how many, oh, how did I get down on that page already? There's 8 pages. It's not that long, you know, it won't take you. And so what I recommend that you do is take it's actually kind of easier to design it. Like if you're going to start fresh with a PowerPoint you haven't created yet, it's kind of easier to just start fresh with a new one than to like take a 20 slide PowerPoint and then retrofit it, but you can certainly do that. But take one that you have coming up, a presentation, something that where you have just a little, like maybe an extra day to prepare for it or something, step through this guide with it. And then from that point forward, make that a habit of how you create your slides. So in PowerPoint, it has a little bit of upfront kind of why we do it, which I kind of started with before I dug into what to do. So you want to be able to use a PowerPoint. It can be a standard template or one that you guys have created, but where you have like the slide, like the master slide template has a title bar and then a text bar and a place to insert. You want that title bar because for accessibility, there needs to be a title on every slide. And that doesn't mean just like you look at it visually, oh yeah, that looks like a title. It's actually like title in the properties, because that way when a screen reader is reading it off, it'll know that that's the title. So it makes it easier for someone who can't see the document to know like the title of each slide. So that's one thing, is you want to kind of use a template that has a title. And if you guys have a standard template you use, you can take one. You can adjust the template, the master in the template, to make sure that you've got kind of the title and they've got some of like the standard font and a couple of other little things, and that will help all of your slides be more accessible. You also want to, so you guys can read through these, they're really easy to follow, so I'm just going to skip over and just cover a couple things. You also want to, when you're creating space between lines, you want to make sure that you use paragraph spacing, and this is in Word and in PowerPoint, instead of the Enter key. So you don't hit Enter key to create a line space. You highlight the cells, and then you, let's see, do I have something? Here's a Word document I was working on today, which I haven't done any accessibility with. But for example, right here, say I wanted more space. Instead of hitting the Enter key like that, and this works the same way in PowerPoint, what I would do is I would highlight it, and I'm going to go to paragraph, and this is where I'm going to create spacing instead. I want it to be real big spacing, so I'm going to increase the spacing here. So you do it that way instead of using the Enter key. And you also don't want to format, whether it's PowerPoint or Word, you don't want to create space by doing a bunch of lines. So like, say, no, this is a bad example. Let me do it over here. Okay, say that I want 2021 to be farther over. So maybe what I will do is I'll create a tab and do it that way. So that way, instead of doing this, space, 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 space. The reason why is because the screen reader reads off those spaces as blanks. So it's going to be, if you do a bunch of spaces to create that spacing, and if I had spacing here in lines, like line spacing, it would read March 1st, blank, 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 until it gets to 2021. So for someone using a screen reader to access the content, that is, they can't see it, they're listening to what the screen reader is reading off, that'll be much better for them. Okay, so that's one thing. So title on every slide, paragraph spacing instead of the return key. And then there are some standard, let me see if it's got, where has it got the font? I may have gone down past it. There's some standard fonts that they recommend that you use. Arial, Calibri, Tahoma, or Verdana. You'll see in these, and they're listed in this guide somewhere. So you want to make sure you use those fonts. And the reason those fonts are chosen, not only for ease of viewing, just kind of the cleanness of it, but they're also chosen in thinking about dyslexia and some other common reading disorders. Those are the most easiest to read fonts, I guess. So, so there were some educated decisions. So there's some things about that. And then you also want to do alt text, and I don't know where is that in here? Oh, okay, here it is. Okay. Adding alt text is really important. And this is again for Word and for PowerPoint. I'm gonna just, let me see if I can pull up a PowerPoint and show you that, because it's, the steps are a little bit different in the new version. So let me just pull one up here. It's just a random PowerPoint that, and then I'll show you something else while I have a PowerPoint open in here. Okay, so it used to be that when you would, to add alt text, you had to right click on the picture and go to format. See, is this in? But now it's right in the picture format tab. So I'm going to click off of the picture for a second. So I'm going to click on this picture. I want to add alternative text, so the screen reader will read off the essence of that picture. From that picture format ribbon, you just go to alt text. It opens it up, and then you just type a short, for a photo, it's just going to be a short statement that conveys the reason why you put that photo there. You know, it's like pretty, or it's an example of a pest, or it's an example of a wildfire, or something like that. You know, the reason why you put that photo there. So you're explaining to someone over the phone a photo that's in a document. That's what you're going to put, just a short description. The new version does actually auto generate alt text, so it's really important that you look at the alt text, because it does some really funny things. I was reviewing a document a couple weeks ago. It was a state forest action plan, and it was an image of it was a graph actually, and the auto generated alt text said picture of a pencil. I had to go back to my partner and I said, you guys might want to check out your alt text in your document, because I don't think that that's showing that right there. Like, what's alt text? And then I had a discussion like I'm having with you right now. Anyway, so that's that. So so like this right here, oh, that's bad. There shouldn't be that spacing. So you're going to use the spacing, you're going to use the alt text, and you want to have that title on each slide. So also in PowerPoint and in Word, there's a handy little accessibility checker that you can use. It doesn't, so someone that's like super savvy into 508 compliance, it's not gonna like give you the answer to everything to make something like 100% 508 compliance, which I don't even know if you could do that, because there's just so many disabilities. I don't know how you would, but anyway, some people will say, you know, like, well, don't rely on the checker, but I think it's a good tool because it does help you. Oops, I forgot alt text on one picture, or, oh, I forgot a title on that slide. And so you're going to do that from File. You're going to go to File. And the instructions for this are a little bit different than before too. So there's actually, I'll show you a couple things on this. So when you go to File and then Info, one thing you want to do over on the properties, under Advanced Properties, is you want to put a title in there. So whether it's a Word, this is the same for Word and PowerPoint. So make sure to put a title in. For the Forest Service stuff for author, in the past I was told like not to have your name, that it should just be the agency. So you'll see a combination of like Forest Service or Forest Service and USDA for Forest Service stuff. If you guys have a different policy, that's totally fine. You're also supposed to set the document to English, but they're usually already set that way anyway. Anyway, so to check for accessibility, again, I went to File, Info, and now I'm going to go to Check for Issues and check accessibility. And then what it's going to do is give you a little thing here on the right. Okay, so there's 3 things that are missing alt text. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to see what they are. And then when you click on it, it'll take you to the slide. And in this case, oh, look at that. It's this arrow. And there's actually this arrow. People don't really even need to know about that arrow. It's just decorative. So you can mark it as decorative. It's just a line or something like that. That really doesn't matter. I don't need to add alt text for it. But if I had photos, then I could click through them and I can go through and make sure that I have all those. And it's also going to tell you to check for the reading order. And there's instructions in here for how to do that. If you do a lot of sort of fancy slide work where like you've got like lines of text and then other lines and another text box and another text box, it's going to kind of take the order by the order you added them in. And so you can move them around so that if it were to read off for somebody, it'll read off in a logical order. For pretty standard slides where you just have a title and then text, you won't really need to worry about the reading order. It's going to be fine. It's going to read the title first and then it's going to read the text. Let's see, what else did it find? Oh, that was it. If there was a slide missing a title, it would have told me that too. So the nice thing about the accessibility checker is it gives you instructions. So once you click on, oh, it's missing alt text, you can read down here. Why does that matter? And here's how I can fix it. So I find it pretty helpful. And it will fix most, it will help you find most issues. So if you in Word, I'm gonna just mention something else. So let me pull up that document I was working on. Lost my train of thought for a second. I was like, what was I going to show you in here? In Word, just like how in PowerPoint, you want to use like a template where it's got a title set for each slide, you know, and then where the text goes for each slide. In Word, what you want to do is use styles. And that's going to create, and I haven't actually done that yet for this document, so that's a perfect one for me to show you. And that's going to create the sort of nested reading order for 508 compliance and accessibility. So for someone who can see the document, you can, maybe if I had like subheadings, like maybe this was a, this is kind of a weird document. But maybe if this, oh, actually, let me open up a different one. That would be a lot better. So I can show you what I'm talking about. Just remove this. Oops. You don't need to see all of that. Okay. So for someone who can see this document, you can look at it and you can see, oh, this is a pretty big heading, right? And then, oh, this is a subheading. And then we have some text underneath it. So setting the styles with the headings helps someone who's accessing it who can't see the document and they're using a screen reader where it reads off. It'll help them navigate those headings and kind of glance across them just like someone who can see it can. So that's why we use styles in Word. And so the way that you do this is the first heading, underneath home, underneath styles, the first heading is going to be heading 1. And so you can you can create, like if you have a document and like you already have it formatted, you can just highlight it and you can right click on heading 1 and you can update it. So that way it makes your heading 1 that style heading 1. And then for the subheadings, let's see how this one's set up here. This one's heading 2 because that's the next level. And I don't know, is this one set up properly? Let's look. Yeah, that's heading 3. And then this is probably like normal or a list. This is list paragraph style. So when you set your Word document up that way, for one, it allows you to do an automatic clickable table of contents, which is nice for longer documents. So I often try to do that too. So when you have your headings set, then it's super easy to do a active table of contents where they can just click and navigate. But the other thing it's going to do is when you take that document then and save it to PDF, if you need to, it's going to make it like much more accessible. So it's kind of a nightmare to like take a PDF unless you're super savvy in Adobe. If you have the original Word document, it's always better to start there, do those accessibility fixes. And it's the same sort of things, adding alt text, using styles to format the headings and the sections, and using paragraph spacing instead of the enter key to create space between documents. Then that Word document itself then is 508 compliant. It's accessible. There's also an accessibility in Word. I think so. Yeah. I have no idea what it will find for this, so it might be scary. Let's see. Oh, not bad. Images have to be in line in Word, and you'll see that in the little brochure for Word. picture too. Oh yeah, this little USDA symbol doesn't have alt text. So see, it works the same way as in PowerPoint. It's picking up this box and it's saying that the box doesn't have alt text. So I can go and say, well, the box is decorative, but the symbol, you know, so anyway, and I can add alt text for the symbol. So that works the same way. But then when you go and save that to PDF, it's going to be a lot more accessible. And there's only a couple little fixes that you have to do in Adobe PDF if that's the format that you need to provide to somebody. I know sometimes people like to do PDF because it's harder for people to change it. So it's kind of more stable, I guess. But the Word document itself is accessible. You don't have to save it as a PDF to make it accessible. And there are a few fixes that you have to do in Acrobat to make it accessible. In Adobe Acrobat Pro, there's also an accessibility checker. Do you guys do PDFs much, or do you do mostly?
A lot of PDFs.
A lot of PDFs. Okay. So if you're starting now, if you're using, do you use Word or do you use InDesign or other things? What do you use to create your?
Both. We'll use Illustrator and InDesign, but I know the text will usually use Word.
Okay. All right. Just trying to find. Let me just pull this up. This document hasn't been checked for accessibility because the only reason I saved it as a PDF was to load it into Adobe Connect. So I'm just going to open up one and show you how to run the accessibility checker in a PDF. So you open up in Adobe Acrobat Pro, and then you go to Tools, and then it's acting funny. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Accessibility. And then it opens up that accessibility panel on the right. And then you click on accessibility check, and then you go ahead and start it. And then what it does is it gives you all the issues. So if there were images, like say you started with a Word document and you saved it to PDF and you forgot to add alt text to one of it, that's going to be listed over here. For the reading order, it's always going to just kind of like flag these two, reading order and color contrast, because you need to like manually check for that. For the title, you have to set the title, and usually you can just click fix and it will take the title from the document and put it in and that'll fix it. But then you can just look down and see if there's any other issues. So if I didn't have I didn't add alt text to this table. And if I didn't have nested headings, which doesn't really apply so much to this document, although I do actually have headings in this document, that would also be another thing that flags up. But that's how you can kind of run accessibility checker in PDF in Adobe Acrobat Pro. So yeah, I would get those. I would go to that site and download those brochures, the one for Word, the one for PowerPoint. There's also one for Excel, if you guys do a lot of sharing of Excel files internally and externally. And it's very similar. Like in Excel, there's a few other things, but it also kind of transfers to table. But like you don't want to do merged cells. Yeah, but anyway, these brochures are pretty handy and they're pretty easy to just walk through with the document you have, or starting fresh with one that you're going to create. And then you just think about it as like, that's the habit of how I'm going to create things now. And then don't think of it as a burden. I mean, it's really some of the features of setting up the titles and the headings and all that sort of thing really make it a cleaner, easier to flow read document for everybody. So it's not just, oh man, I got to do this because someone might have an accessibility need. And once you learn some of those common things, the alt text, the line spacing, the styles, it's just the way that you go about creating the document. It's just the habit of how you create something, so you won't think twice about it in the future once you kind of get in the habit of it. Do you guys have questions? So I'm not I didn't really start off with this. I'm not a 508 compliance expert at all. I've just been trying to do it for quite a while because it's important to me that folks are able to access the documents. And I don't see virtual meetings and digital documents as like you could ever have them be 100% 508 compliant, because there's a lot of different disabilities out there. There's a lot of different needs people have. But I know there's a lot of things in my control in creating a document, in designing a virtual meeting, where I can make it, hugely more accessible, just by a few tweaks in how I create things and how I present information. That just makes it, I like to think more in the 90% accessible rather than me not thinking about it at all.
So no, I appreciate it, Sherry. Thanks because again, we're roaming into new territory a lot for at least for me as a new Forest Service employee, learning this kind of stuff, and we're figuring a lot of this stuff going kind of as we go. So thanks for coming in and taking the time to chat with us. And for our internal NAFRE folks, just to note where she's talking about the styles for like headers and paragraphs and all that stuff. I understand what she's saying. So if we need to chat about that, that's cool. The master slides layouts, that's its own option in PowerPoint. I can show you where that's at and how that works. It's basically a stencil for doing the slide out ahead of time. Just not very many people use it. They just do a new slide and they title each one. So we can have our own internal stuff if you guys have questions on that. But Sherry, I know you're super busy. Did you guys have questions for Sherry real quick before she has to go on to her other meetings?
I'd say, Sherry,